Hello. Nice to see everyone. Welcome. We are very excited to have you here with us today for the Compact Carbon Capture Challenge webinar. We're going to jump right in. My name is Heather Kirchetier. I'm the Director of Innovation Challenges with Foresight Canada. And today we are excited to tell you about this exciting challenge. But before we dig in, it is with gratitude and respect that we acknowledge that we are on the lands that are the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I am joining from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and are now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So we will start off with an introduction like we're doing right now, and then we'll talk a little bit about our challenge partner, which is Fortis BC, of course. We'll talk about the challenge itself. Then we'll dig into the application process and evaluation. We'll cover some key dates and eligibility criteria, and then we'll have lots of time for Q&A. I'm very excited to be joined by some folks from Fortis BC. Mike Leyland is Fortis BC's Manager of Innovation Initiatives, to supporting and championing grassroots innovation efforts at Fortis BC. Mike is responsible for helping manage Fortis BC's Clean Growth Innovation Fund, as well as providing oversight for Fortis BC's investments in electric vehicle charging infrastructure and associated program development. We also have Matt Hill, who is a renewable gas engineer at Fortis BC, focused on decarbonizing the gaseous energy system in BC. His work involves several CCS applications, including lowering the carbon intensity of hydrogen production and distributed point source capture. And we also have Liam Cook, who is an analyst of resource development at Fortis BC. He holds a BSc in environmental science and is pursuing a management of technology MBA at SFU. His work in CCS includes investigating sequestration in BC and scoping out major supply projects. Liam looks forward to tackling the hard problems of our time. And what better way to do that than with an innovation challenge? So for those of you who are not as familiar with Foresight, Foresight is Canada's clean tech accelerator. We bring partners together to identify, commercialize, and adopt the clean technologies needed to address today's most urgent climate challenges. We support the identification and validation of clean tech opportunities and the successful commercialization of solutions. We bring together industry, government, academia, investors, and innovators to address today's most urgent climate issues and support a global transition to a green economy. And there's a lot going on at Foresight, but we divide our activities into 5 main areas. We have our accelerator program, where we support companies in different stages and sectors to accelerate their technologies, scale, or commercialize solutions. We support companies in capital attraction and as well as export development. And we create ecosystems in which clean tech can thrive, connecting the stakeholders in the sector using our Helix 5 model. Again, those stakeholders are innovators, industry, investors, government, and academia. And as you all know, we run innovation challenges for innovation partners that want to improve their processes or reduce their environmental impact. So with that, I'm very pleased to pass it over to the Fortis BC team to dive into the specifics of the Compact Carbon Capture Challenge. Over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Heather. And you can flip to the next slide here. So good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be, for all the folks on the line, and thanks for joining us here today. As Heather already mentioned, my name is Mike Leyland, Manager of Innovative Initiatives here at Fortis BC. I'm pleased to be calling in from Kelowna, located on the traditional unceded territories of the Syilx peoples, on whose lands we all live, work, and play. I just wanted to provide a bit of a quick overview on who Fortis BC is. We are a combined gas and electric utility located in the province of BC. And across our gas and electric divisions, we serve about 1.2 million customers across the province. Together, we are the largest energy provider in BC. On our gas side, we operate almost 3,000 kilometers of gas transmission pipelines and almost 50,000 kilometers of gas distribution pipelines. So we've made substantial investments in infrastructure to serve the province's energy needs. Now, as a utility, we are very focused on sustainability. And in 2022, we helped our customers avoid almost 800,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions through a combination of investments in renewable natural gas, increasing customer access to low and zero emission transportation, and investments in energy efficiency programs. In fact, through our energy efficiency programs, we helped customers save almost 1.2 million gigajoules in 2022. We are also focused on strong government and Indigenous relationships. As BC's leading energy provider, we know we have an important role to play in transforming BC's energy future. The provincial government has recognized this and has updated emission reduction requirements to help meet climate action targets in the province. We've made great progress to support these targets through our Clean Growth Pathway, which includes investments we are making through our Clean Growth Innovation Fund, or what we refer to as the CGIF. The grant funding provided through the CGIF is used to help support projects and technologies that ultimately could reduce emissions in BC. This includes things like improving the production of renewable natural gas, supporting the development of novel and clean production methods for hydrogen, as well as the development of new technologies for carbon capture and utilization and storage. As a combined gas and electric utility, we believe we are uniquely positioned to understand and respond to the challenges to help decarbonize energy systems in BC. So with that overview out of the way, I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Liam Cook, to discuss the importance of this challenge that we are launching to help identify small-scale carbon capture solutions. So Liam, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. So the BC government's new energy action framework will impose a 6 million ton per year emissions cap on natural gas utilities. Fortis BC is looking for ways to reduce our carbon emissions across the entire value chain. In this initiative, we are looking for modular solutions to capture carbon from our infrastructure operations. Our parent company, Fortis Inc., has also set a target of 75% Scope 1 emissions reduction by 2035. In addition to renewable gases, Fortis is exploring carbon capture as a viable way to meet our compliance targets. The energy transition will require a suite of tools deployed, and we are looking to explore all of the options. And now I will pass it to Matt to go over some of the details.
Thanks, Liam. So as my colleague Liam mentioned, we're looking for modularity, scalability, and deployability for the technology that is selected through this challenge. And a key aspect of that is, as you saw in the figure that Michael shared, our operations cover a wide range of the province, and many of our larger Scope 1 emission sources are far from major municipalities. So as a result, the final technology might need to operate unsupervised in remote locations. And we're really looking at three key areas for Scope 1 emissions throughout the Fortis BC service territory. The first and largest is our compression required to move gas throughout the province and out to Vancouver Island. These are our large 1,000 to 7,000 horsepower turbine engines for compressor units with a very small entrained CO2 in the flue gas stream, approximately 4%. So it's a unique challenge that we're looking to identify those smaller sources of emissions in about 1,000 to 10,000 tons per year from those compressors. And the reason for that is Clean BC and other funding mechanisms really focus on reporting entities that emit more than 10,000 tons per year. So this challenge that we've started is focusing on that unique application that potentially is underfunded here in the province, but still contributes to a large amount of provincial emissions from the distributed sources. The second area that we're looking to research and find application for is our line heaters, or the heating required to reduce the pressure of gas throughout the province at our municipal pressure reduction stations. This is a large source of emissions, and it's a little bit higher, maybe of a 7 to 10% CO2 in the flue gas, and also in that 1,000 to maybe 5,000 tons per year of CO2 emissions. And the final area that we're looking to address is a much higher CO2 concentration stream from our renewable natural gas or our biogas upgrading facilities. So the entrained CO2 and landfill gas, for example, is approximately 40%, and following upgrading, that can reach up to 65% and beyond. So we are looking for technologies that would fit that profile, and that's an exciting area as that CO2 is biogenic. So by capturing that CO2, it could further reduce the carbon intensity of our renewable natural gas that we're offering to our customers to achieve an even greater emissions reduction benefit. And finally, the outcome of the challenge here that we're looking for is potential for our Clean Growth Innovation Fund funding, as Mike mentioned earlier. That has the opportunity for up to $500,000 to support new technologies that are applicable here in the emission sources in British Columbia. So we're very excited to see what's proposed throughout this challenge, and I'll pass it back to the Foresight team for some additional details.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So now that we know a bit about the background, the main objectives of the challenge, and why it's so important, let's review the key dates. So we are accepting submissions now. Those opened towards the end of June. As you know, obviously, today is the information webinar, and a key date for you to be aware of is August 4th. So this is when the submission window closes. They are due at 11:59 p.m. Pacific. Following that, we will go through an evaluation period with our review committee in August. From there, we will select finalists who will be invited to pitch to the review committee. Those pitches will likely be the third week of September, but will be confirmed with the finalists. And then the winner or winners will be announced in October 2023. Moving on to the eligibility criteria, which we heard of from the Fortis team a little bit, but just a reminder, we're looking for solutions that are at least TRL 6, that are applicable for those emission sources ranging from that 1,000 to 10,000 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, that can be applied to existing brownfield equipment, are ideally modular, so allowing the solution could be scaled, having that minimal footprint, and being able to accommodate limited availability of electricity at some of the sites. And just as a final reminder as well, applicants from anywhere in the world are eligible to apply. Some tips for your application. Number one, make sure that you fulfill the eligibility requirements. Give yourself a double check to make sure that you do qualify for the challenge based on your solution. Secondly, don't wait until the deadline to submit your application. Don't set yourself up for heartbreak if there are any technical glitches. We are not able to accept applications after that deadline. And finally, also be sure to provide data evidence where possible to support any qualitative descriptions. Make sure to use clear language in the technical descriptions of your solution and explain what's been done to date. And also keep in mind that we are available to answer any questions. So feel free to reach out to us at any time if you have questions about the challenge or the application process. You can reach us at challenges@foresightcac.com. And with that, we're going to open it up now to you for some Q&A. So feel free to use the Q&A function from the webinar. We have a question first from Stephen. The final pitch will be virtual, so won't have to worry about attending anything in person. Any other questions from the audience? We have someone asking, is it possible to apply as a sequestration company only?
So I think we would encourage the proponent to maybe identify somebody to partner with on an application if they're only looking at a sequestration technology. The focus of the challenge really is on both capture and utilization and or sequestration as well. So my response would be, like I said, look for somebody maybe to partner up with on your application so you can kind of cover both sides of the challenge there, the capture and sequestration.
Give folks a minute to think of their questions. Okay, we have a question coming in from Robert. Does the technology need to be installed on site, or is a test facility such as Alberta's ACCTC acceptable?
So we would definitely be willing to entertain applications that identify, a test facility somewhere for technology to be demonstrated. So that's definitely, something we would welcome.
Great. Question about the footprint of the solution. So the footprint was mentioned. Is there a value to this? Is tonnage per acre or equivalent? Is there some kind of insight you can give to that?
And I will defer to my colleagues on this one. Matt?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we can probably provide some additional detail if that question is submitted to the Foresight team following this application. We do have a range of facility footprints depending on if we're looking at a compressor station where we do have some more acreage available versus some of our municipal pressure reduction stations, which are limited to that small right of way within a municipality. So it is a range, but we can provide some additional numbers there for the specific application that you're targeting following the webinar.
Yeah, sounds great, Stephen. If you want to send me an email at challenges@forsightcac.com, we can provide a little bit more detail there. We have a question coming in from Anna. If there are companies looking to sequester or utilize, but don't know whom to partner with, maybe there is an opportunity to help match up folks up with each other. They are carbon capture company interested in partners on offtake. And so maybe a good way to facilitate that, Anna, would be to, again, send an email to challenges@forsightcac.com. And we can look to our carbonNEXT program to see if there might be any opportunities to identify folks who are interested in finding partners. We have another question coming in. The scale is said to be of the 1,000 to 10,000 tons of CO2 per year. Is that the scale of the emission source, or is that the demo that needs to be conducted?
Matt, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that would be that's the scale of the emission sources that we've identified as part of the challenge. It's not necessarily the demonstration unit that would be required as part of the challenge, provided that it is scalable to the range of emissions that we're targeting here.
Question coming in about regulatory approvals. So who will be responsible for any regulatory approvals associated with the use of a technology at a site?
So on that front, I would suggest it would be on the proponent to identify any approvals they believe would be required. Depending on what's ultimately proposed, I could see us working, in partnership with the proponent. Depending again what approvals are required, there might be some that we would have to go to our regulator for approval on. But definitely would ask the applicants to identify any and all approvals they believe are required.
What is the timeline for implementation of the technology?
So we haven't set any sort of definitive timeline. Ideally, I think we would be looking for a demonstration or a proposal on something that could be actioned, within the next year. I would say would be kind of the timeline we'd be operating under. But again, open to having these conversations with proponents.
Okay. What are the limitations to stack funding with other programs? What is the percentage of total project cost that can be funded? What project expenses would not be funded? And is there a maximum project size or partnering requirements? Happy to go over any of those specifics again, Mike, if helpful.
Yeah, as far as the, with respect to our Clean Growth Innovation Fund, we do not have any limitations with respect to stacking. That's not the same though as obviously other programs, provincial or federal or otherwise. So there may be, if a proponent already has secured funding through another source, there may be, stacking limitations coming from them. But with respect to our funding, we have no stacking limitations. Percent of total project costs that could be funded if we were to move forward with a proposal using our Clean Growth Innovation Fund would be 50%, so to a maximum of 50%. And typically the maximum dollar value for any of the grant funding we're providing through the CGIF is about $500,000. That's not a hard and fast threshold, but generally speaking, it has to be a fairly exceptional project to exceed $500,000. As far as project expenses that would not be funded, really nothing explicit. We'd have to see the detail on the proposal ultimately, but the grant funding is pretty. We've got a lot of latitude with it in terms of what we were able to fund. So I wouldn't call out anything that would be totally excluded from funding. No real maximum project size or partner requirements. We do like to see partners. You know, the hope with the CGI funding is, you know, we're seeing applicants come in that have partnered with other entities and they're able to leverage this funding ultimately. And so, you know, we're just an additional funding source to help advance whatever technology development they're working on.
Thank you. Okay, is a source of waste heat available at any of the sites or types of sites?
I believe so, but again, Matt, you can speak to this.
Yes, I would say in the 3 areas that I identified, two areas are compression and biogas upgrading. There is waste heat that would be available. With respect to our line heaters, it would be the weight generated, or the heat generated through our processing. So there would be availability there as well. So yes, and you can follow up with a specific question to the Foresight team, and we can provide some more detailed numbers at that time.
Will deep geothermal technology be considered? The technology can be used on eligible abandoned and used oil and gas infrastructure.
I guess I'm looking to Matt, Liam. I definitely think it's something we could consider. I would flag, however, you know, given the jurisdiction we're operating here in BC, there's not really a whole bunch of abandoned and used oil and gas infrastructure in kind of the areas where we've identified these emission sources. So not to say it's excluded, but yeah, I'm just not sure how applicable it would be in our service area. Liam, if you have anything else to add there.
No, I think you covered it.
So we may have touched on this already, but just to reiterate, is there a maximum acceptable cost for the project?
Yeah, so no maximum cost. Like I said, we do have kind of a funding threshold through our CGIF of about $500,000, and we would only be funding up to 50% of total project costs. So,
how are you addressing CO2 equivalent from cogen and boilers in the urban setting?
not sure, Liam, did you want to take this one, or I can? It's
Go for it, Mike.
Sure. So, yeah, we are definitely, you know, looking at technologies to help address those smaller point source emission sources. So we've been working for a number of years with a company headquartered out of Calgary, Clean02, who does have a small carbon capture solution to address those very types of emissions. That's not really the focus of the challenge that we're launching here today, but that is one pathway we are working on to help address those emission sources.
Okay. Question about preventing forests from burning. So does saving forests from burning and preventing GHG emissions from wildfires count as a solution to this competition?
Definitely, you know, that's a critical area of interest. It is not the focus of the challenge that we're discussing here today. So for any proponents, you know, that are interested in advancing a solution, as sort of described there, what I would encourage them to do is look at the CICE challenge on forest residues. That's another challenge we're participating in with CICE, and definitely something like that would have applicability there.
Great. Would an application based on a DAC technology be considered, or is it limited to point source capture systems?
So Matt, feel free to jump in. I think, you know, we definitely, the focus is on point source capture. That all being said, you know, we identified that a number of these emission sources are located in areas where there's not adequate electrical infrastructure. They're a long ways from other locations. So we do believe DAC is going to have a role to play in helping us reduce emissions. So we definitely would be interested in receiving applications that are more focused on DAC. But again, keeping in mind, we are really looking for these, ideally, these solutions that can address these point source emissions directly.
Okay, we have someone asking if it's possible for them to send a quick brief of the company to the challenge email to see if they're eligible or something that would be aligned for the challenge. Yes, absolutely. Feel free to send us a note. Again, any questions about this challenge or the application process, definitely we are happy to receive any of those. Okay, this one, I think we just covered. Are you seeking DAC atmospheric carbon removal solutions in addition to point source? We just covered that. If a single design has, nope, not sure. Reza, if you can add a little bit of additional detail, we have if a single design has to take care of different identified emission sources. I think you're asking, does it have to be one design to take care of all of the different identified emission sources?
Right, that's how I'm understanding that question as well. And I think my answer would be that is if there is something that is applicable to that large range of CO2 percentages in the flue gas, then we would be interested in looking into that. From the research that I've done, I doubt that's going to be the case. So we're likely going to be looking at specific technologies that apply to either the traditional industrial combustion sources at that 4 to 10% CO2, or specific technology for our renewable natural gas upgrading facilities at that higher flue gas percentage.
Okay. So question here, is this current users of natural gas or renewable natural gas that are working to decarbonize their current boilers and cogen?
So we're looking at Fortis BC owned and operated equipment here specifically for this challenge. So not necessarily our customers' gas-fired equipment. However, lots of that equipment will have similar combustion profiles and emissions ranges as our Scope 1 emission sources. However, the focus of the challenge is for our own operated equipment, as we would be able to demonstrate that at a pilot scale in our own facilities.
Thanks, Matt. Are per feed studies funded?
I think they meant pre-feed. And
Pre-feed?
yes, a pre-feed study could potentially be eligible, again, depending on the nature of the solution that's being proposed.
Great. So again, I think we've covered this, but just confirming that.
Yeah, maybe just for a bit of clarity. So the outcome, there's a variety of outcomes, potentially here for folks that may be successful with their application to the challenge. I think the main outcome is an opportunity to work directly with Fortis BC on whatever solution the proponent is trying to advance. So this could include doing a demonstration at one of the facilities that we've identified here. It could include invitation to apply to our Clean Growth Innovation Fund for further funding up to $500,000 in non-repayable grant funding to support that technology development. And that technology development doesn't necessarily need to take place at one of our facilities that we've identified. It could happen at the Alberta Emissions Testing Center, as was previously discussed, or elsewhere. So a variety of outcomes here for proponents, depending on what ultimately is being proposed. So hopefully that answers the question. The funding available from Fortis BC at a maximum, if they were to go through our Clean Growth Innovation Fund, would be $500,000, though.
Thanks, Mike. Will nature-based solutions be included? Things like biochar for carbon capture and sequestration.
Yeah, I mean, I think that similar to DAC, we do want to look at solutions coming in, and so it'll really depend on the strength of the application and the total emissions reduction. But I think, as Mike mentioned before, the focus of this really is on modular solutions to address emissions at the point source. But we certainly don't want to exclude anything that could help us meet our targets.
Are you able to share how much power is typically available for the pilot?
I think that's a question we would have to take away. Obviously, the available power at these different sites varies depending where the site is located and what we have today for available electrical capacity. So, if that is information that you feel you would definitely need to help inform your proposal, reach out to the Foresight team here, and we'll work with them to get you that information.
We have a question asking for some additional details on the CO2 cap referred to earlier in the presentation and the timeline to achieve the cap. And also maybe someone from the Foresight team, can you drop the link to the program application guide into the chat? It sounds like this person is having a hard time finding that guideline.
Yeah, so that refers to the BC government has their new energy action framework. It's in Clean BC, and so they've proposed putting a emissions cap on natural gas utilities. It hasn't yet gone into legislation in the province. So the exact timeline and what that exact cap is may change, but high level, we're looking at 6 million tons a year in 2030. So, but it's not in legislation, and I think the province is looking at pathways so that can be achieved. So yeah.
Thank you. Another question about the potential funding available: is project overhead included as an eligible expense under that grant program?
Yes, project overheads would be eligible under the CGIF.
Okay, so we have a question. How would you support CO2 equivalent capture from boilers or cogen using renewable biogas? Would this count as negative values on GHG?
So I would say that we do already employ renewable natural gas as a carbon reduction strategy here throughout the province, and that is something our customers can take advantage of currently. The idea here is that we're looking for CCUS as a way to supplement that RNG program. So we aren't looking at displacing traditional methane with renewable natural gas for this challenge. We'd be more focused at supplementing that with an additional capture at the point source.
Great.
Or capturing that CO2 at an RNG production facility, as Matt discussed earlier, right? Helping to lower the carbon intensity, in fact, make it negative, I believe, of the RNG that's being produced by that facility. So a fairly concentrated stream of CO2 at some of these RNG plants.
Would a feasibility study for a technology application be considered?
I think it's definitely something we could consider. As Heather, you kind of outlined earlier, we really are trying to focus on technologies that are TRL 6 and above. But again, we don't want to necessarily exclude anything. So yes, it would be considered.
We have Fred weighing in. Sounds like you have a technology that would be pretty applicable. So we hope to see an application from you. And sounds like the timelines could be aligned with what the team's looking for. So looking forward to seeing that application. We have, if a project is approved and implemented, who would pay for the sequestration?
I think those are the kinds of details we would have to work out with the proponent. I couldn't say with any certainty right now who ultimately would pay. So those details would have to be something we'd explore, after announcing the finalists or the winner of the challenge.
Okay, we have a question. Are you looking at technologies outside of clean O2 for urban settings?
We are definitely broadly interested in other technologies that may have applicability in urban settings, Fred, definitely. Not the focus necessarily of the challenge we're here discussing today, but if there's something you'd like to make us aware of, please reach out to the Foresight team and be glad to connect and discuss further.
We're having more suggestions around the opportunities for some nature-based solutions, forest underbrush and millions of dead trees that could be used for biodiesel and natural gas production. So
they're on the same wavelength we are. So I'm just going to try to find the CIC challenge, and we can drop that in the chat as well, because that definitely is the challenge you'd want to be looking at for solutions that are more focused on that.
Yeah, that's great. While you're doing that, maybe Liam and Matt can take the next couple. Hopefully that makes sense. Are you looking at technologies for CO2 removal in gas processing applications, and does a demonstration need to be in Canada?
So with respect to gas processing, that's outside of the Fortis BC operations, as we are a midstream distribution organization. We don't operate any processing facilities in conventional gas production. However, we do operate 2 biogas upgrading facilities, and there's several more in feed or construction throughout the province. So I would say yes, in that sense, there's several processing steps and our PSAs, TSAs that would be applicable from the conventional production side for this challenge. And Michael, I'll let you speak to the Canada demonstration aspect.
Yeah, definitely. It's not limited to just Canada. So we're open to hearing proposals for demonstrations in Canada, in the United States, elsewhere, over in Europe. definitely would like to see a focus on Canada. I think, there's a lot more impact when we can draw kind of a line from something that can be demonstrated, let's say in BC or in Alberta, that we can see has direct applicability to the point sources we've identified here, but there is no limitation. And Heather, I did just drop the link for the CIC call for innovations. I'm not sure the attendees can see it. I think it might have just went to the hosts and panelists. So I'll let Foresight drop that into the chat as appropriate.
Perfect. I think Shannon has already done so. So we are
Wonderful. Excellent.
Good to go. Is the cap on your production of natural gas, or does it also include the end users of the GHG equivalents?
Yeah, so there's two different things there. Fortis doesn't engage in the production of natural gas. We're a distributor. But in terms of the province, they are putting a cap on the oil and gas industry, which includes that. That's a separate cap. The cap on Fortis applies to all of our emissions, which includes scope 3.
I'm seeing, digging into the nature-based solutions opportunities. In order to use the biomass, there is the need to prevent wildfires, and the underbrush and dead trees are strategically cut forest products. So shouldn't this apply as point source carbon capture?
I don't necessarily disagree. Again, we've talked about the emissions cap with respect to the utility, the 6 megatons. The focus here really is on those scope 1 emission sources, right? From our compressor stations, line heaters, our RNG production facilities. So I take your point. I don't disagree, but just for the sake of clarity, the focus of this challenge is really trying to identify those solutions that will help us reduce those scope 1 emissions.
Great. Okay. And we have reached the end of the questions. We'll give folks maybe another minute or two in case any new questions come to mind before we wrap up. And in the meantime, maybe Shannon, do you mind dropping the challenge email in the chat just so everyone has it? It's also up on the screen. Fantastic. As I said, if you have any questions about either your eligibility or the application process, or even anything else about the challenge, do feel free to send us an email. We're happy to chat. We can pass on any specific technical questions to the Fortis BC team and make sure that you're feeling comfortable with the application. No questions coming in.
And great questions, great points made on the forestry residue piece there. And like I said, I'd point folks towards that CIC forest residue management. We partnered with them on that. I believe there's up to $3 million available in funding through that particular challenge there. So definitely have a look at that.
Fantastic. Okay. Looks like we have reached the end of the question. So I want to thank Mike, Liam, and Matt very much for your time and participation in today's webinar. Hopefully folks found it valuable, and we really look forward to seeing all the applications coming in for this challenge. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. We're super excited to see what gets proposed here.